Okay, so after our lesson today with 5-1, I just want to talk to you about irrational numbers. If you look at the Check Your Understanding on page 62, number 7 says name the irrational number in each set. So what I have to do is, remember, irrational means that it cannot be represented in the form of a fraction. So if I were to put the number in my calculator, I would get a decimal that never repeats, and it cannot be, it never terminates, right? So it can't be a fraction. The only two things that represent a fraction when we translate them to a decimal are decimals that stop or terminate, or decimals that repeat the same number or series of numbers over and over again. So number 7 says name the irrational number in each set. So if I went ahead and put this in my calculator, I would get a decimal that stops. But 17 divided by 2 is a fraction, so it's rational. The square root of 8, I'm going to come back to. I think that's my choice that I want to circle, but I want to make sure first. Cube root of 8, I can put in my calculator. If you remember, our button pushes for cube root is that I use second caret, and it gives me that little X. On my calculator, it will put the little number as a little number. It will put that index up there for me. Yours probably won't. It'll just say 3 and then X with the radical sign, and I can put in 8. And when I do that, it is a perfect cube of 2. So 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. So this is actually a number as well. That means the one that is going to repeat, that is going to go on forever, infinitely many, and never ever stop, is the square root. Let me just pick square root of 8, because it is not a perfect square. So I get this crazy decimal that doesn't have a pattern, and it goes on forever. All right, so number 8, I have a repeating decimal there, which means eventually that is a fraction. This number is a number cubed, so that just means 6 times 6 times 6. So that is not an irrational. But if I put the square root of 65 in my calculator, I know that that is not a perfect square. I don't have to know what the decimal equals on either of these problems. I just have to know that they aren't rational. Okay, so number 9 says estimate the following square roots to the 10th place without using a calculator. These are going to be problems that are on your test. There's going to be problems like this on a quiz. There's going to be problems like this on your embedded assessment. So these are pretty important ones to review. The square root of 10. So remember, I have to know my perfect squares. So if I start with 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9. Ooh, I'm really close to 10. So 9 is probably what I'm going to need. Because if I go to 4, if I go to 4, that gives me the square root of 16. So the square root of 10 is between the square root of 9 and the square root of 16. The square root of 9 is 3. So this is going to be 3 point something. Now I'm looking at my numbers here, and 10 is way closer to 9 than it is to 16. So I'm just going to guess 3.1 right there. So you can get the whole number perfectly. You know it's more than 3, but the 10th place without a calculator is an estimate. You're going to have to do a little guessing right there. And it's logical, so I have an educated guess. Now 28, the square root of 28, I have to think what two perfect squares does it land between? Well, I think of my perfect squares. 4 is 16, and then the square root 5 squared is 25. Okay, that's pretty close. Square root of 6 is 36. Again, it looks like that 5 is going to be my whole number, and it's not quite in between. In between would be like closer to 30, so maybe, I don't know, I'm going to say 5.4. It's going to be my close 5.3, 5.4. All right, and now I have the square root of 73, and it's got to be between two other numbers that are perfect squares. So I got up to 6 squared. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared is 64. Oh, that's probably one of them. 9 squared is 81. So 73 is between 64 and 81. Square root of 64 is 8. So now I have to decide, is it closer to the square root of 81 or the square root of 64? I think it's a little bit closer to 81, not by very much. I don't know, it's really close. I'm just going to say it's half. That's halfway in between. Now, part D says put these three numbers on a number line in their approximate place. So my first number was 3.1, so that's going to be A right there, a little bit more than 3. 5.4 is not quite half, that's going to be my B. And then 8.5 is going to be right in the middle, and that's what I got there for C. All right. Now, the answer book might say that it's a little bit smaller, a little bit off, but again, it's just an educated guess. All right, and I'll see you in class.